Welcome back to the Woven Well podcast. Today we're talking about a term that you may have heard of before, but may not have had much context given around it, and that is reproductive biomarkers. Biomarkers in general are biological indicators of a process or an event happening now or that may happen in the future. Often they're external signs of an internal process, and that's certainly true for the reproductive ones. But more general ones that you may already be familiar with are known as the four vital signs. So, temperature, heart rate, respiration rate, blood pressure. These are pretty common. You've heard of them. You know that you can take your pulse and it will give you some sort of insight into your heart health or current state of your heart, whether it's racing or irregular or anything else of note. Well, some refer to the menstrual cycle and all the biomarkers that go along with that as the fifth vital sign, like Lisa Henderson Jack's book. When you understand how to use these reproductive biomarkers, you can know exactly where you are in your cycle, what hormone is dominant, whether your hormones seem balanced and strong or not, when you're fertile and infertile, and even signs of underlying health conditions or infections. But most of us have never heard of them. We're not taught about them in school when we're given sex education or by our doctors when we come in with women's health complaints. Yet once you learn what they are and how to use them, they are as informative and useful as taking your pulse or checking your temperature. So at least after today, you won't be in the dark about what they are. You'll still have more to learn. Certainly, there's a lot of information out there, but you'll be on the path to being truly informed and empowered as you advocate for your reproductive health and care for your female body. So, here are some of the main ones, and then I'll give you a little context for each one and how it may be helpful for you. The menstrual flow, cervical mucus or fluid, whichever term you're more comfortable with, basal body temperature, cervical position, and urinary hormones that can be monitored at home. So let's start with the most basic of these reproductive biomarkers and the one that you're probably most familiar with, the menstrual flow. So even the presence of a period is a significant indicator of health. If you aren't having periods, you could be under far too much stress. You could be undernourished or have thyroid issues, or of course, you could be pregnant. Surprise! But if we look deeper into things like the length of the period itself, the color of the blood, the quantity or even quality of the blood, like in our episode with Emily Kuntz about blood clots, we discover even more information. The link to that episode, by the way, is in the show notes if you want to go there and listen to more. The period is where most of our education stops, though, which is not good enough because our reproductive health is not only about a period. Our period is one part of a larger system called the reproductive system. So we pay attention to the period because it's so obvious, there's no missing it. But if you really want to learn more about your reproductive health and signs of health or concern for your overall health, even, you can look deeper into the other reproductive biomarkers. So now that you know what they are, how can you observe them? Some simple instruction is really helpful here. Everyone knows how to take their pulse, but only because they've heard about it so many times. We need to be talking about how to test our reproductive biomarkers a lot to catch up with that kind of exposure. So cervical mucus or fluid, you can determine that simply by wiping the vulva and making note of characteristics like consistency and color, which can tell you a lot of information when standardized and tracked. Basal body temperature. It's like taking your resting temperature, which is often done right when you first wake up in the morning before you even get out of bed. There are lots of options for how to do this. You could use a simple thermometer specifically for basal body temperature, or there are a lot of new options for wearables, whether you love them or hate them. They're out there. There are rings and watches and armbands and all sorts of things. As far as cervical position goes, you can do an internal check to feel whether the cervix is high or low, soft or firm, open or closed, which can be observed and tracked to note changes throughout your cycle. And then, of course, we have urinary hormones that can be monitored at home. Now, you do have to have some sort of extra tool to be able to do this. It may be something like a clear blue monitor or a Mira hormone monitor, which of course you're familiar with as they are one of our sponsors, as well as Prove strips. So the proved tests can be used, specifically their confirmed tests can be used to identify if your progesterone is rising after ovulation, which indicates a successful ovulation, but also progesterone is essential for implantation and pregnancy. Both of these, Mira and Prove, are some of our sponsors for our upcoming book, Woven Well. So we'll make sure to have links to be able to get some of their goodies for pre-ordering our book there in the show notes. But there are tons of different hormone monitors on the market that could really give you great insight into some of these urinary hormones. FSH, estrogen, LH, progesterone. It's a great way to be able to get some information on those. And I do feel like it's necessary to point out that these are not all equal. When we think about reproductive biomarkers, I can't say that they're equal in the fact that they don't all provide the same type or the same level of information. So we, of course, teach the Creighton model system here at Woven Natural Fertility Care because of the fact that it makes use of the most amount of information from the least amount of tracking, which is through cervical mucus. And there are tons of past episodes on that if you want to learn more about cervical mucus, cervical fluid, Creighton model system, or anything like that. But that doesn't mean that each of these other reproductive biomarkers don't have something really valuable to offer, or that one or the other may not be a better fit for you. So the book that we have coming out in July actually has a section that helps you think through which may be the best fit for you specifically. Whichever you choose, though, you can make use of them very quickly with proper instruction. They could pinpoint the root of your hormonal migraines or point you toward the cause of recurrent pregnancy losses. They could help you know when to expect your next period down to the day, even when you have chronically irregular cycles. So these reproductive biomarkers are very handy. We don't want to miss out on them. And so at the very end of today's episode, I'm going to share about some other potential biomarkers too. But the ones that I've mentioned so far are so consistent and trustworthy as messengers of information that there are actually formalized methods of family planning and health built around them. Now, I know what you may be thinking. Consistent? Trustworthy? Really? We're talking about my cycle? We're talking about my hormones? I don't think I could use the word consistent and trustworthy, right? Like I can hear you saying that right now. But yes, if there are changes or gaps with these biomarkers, then there's always a reason why. So if you look into that reason with a trained medical professional who's also trained in these biomarkers, shockingly, not all are, but that is improving, then you can often discover that cause. For instance, earlier I talked about someone who may not have a period, and it could be the possibility that they are undernourished or working out too much for them personally, or could be under too much stress or have a thyroid dysfunction. The sign, the biomarker, is not having a period. Once we recognize that, then we look into why, and we can actually treat that underlying issue, whether it's chronic stress that needs to be reduced, or you may not be taking in enough calories. So understanding that is the first step. Another example is constant cervical mucus. If you begin charting your cycles, for instance, and looking at cervical fluid, and you discover that you're seeing it every single day, then we're going to start charting that on a Creighton chart to look like a particular thing, but we're also investigating why this is happening. For instance, it could be that the cause is insulin resistance. Some women, when they have glucose or insulin issues, will produce this extra cervical fluid throughout the cycle that's not related to fertility, but it does give us a heads up that there is something else going on. Once we identify that glucose or insulin issue, treat it directly, not only are you healthier overall for having that resolved, but also your cycles will begin to change and you may not notice as much of that cervical mucus. So it's really not random like we're often led to believe. It is intentional. These reproductive biomarkers give us information. And God made it exquisitely. It's really crazy. Like it's so intentional how God designed it. And thankfully, we're living in an age when we can actually study and research and measure and use this information. It's always been there. We just have the ability now to do something with it. But from the beginning, God wrote this into our DNA, since creation. And to me, that's a reminder of how much God loves us. that He put this in from the very beginning for our good. I really believe that God doesn't want our own bodily system to feel so foreign to us. I really think that He designed them for our good and as a meaningful way to even draw us into closer relationship with Him. And learning about our cycles and our reproductive biomarkers for the first time can absolutely be a powerful invitation for that. One of my favorite parts of my job as a certified fertility care practitioner is seeing women learn more about their design and then discovering how that can positively impact their relationship with their own body, with their design as a woman, and with their relationship with God. It really can flip our thoughts about things like family planning and how we should be treated as women, even at the doctor's office. It just flips it upside down. We deserve so much more than we're commonly given. And I think that learning how God can empower us through His own design may often be the first step to truly believing it. So, if you're interested in learning more about reproductive biomarkers so that you can advocate for your women's health needs, or maybe heal a strained relationship with your own body, we've got options for you. The first is that you can now pre-order a copy of Woven Well, a Christian woman's guide to reproductive health, fertility, and wholeness through Amazon, christianbook.com, Barnes & Noble, wherever you get your books. Shop local, call them, ask if they have it. But the great part about pre-ordering specifically is that we have lots of pre-order gifts and bonuses. So wherever you choose to buy from, make sure to go to wovenfertility.com and enter your pre-order information so that you get all the extras too. Just to say it again, the bonuses and prizes are only available during the pre-order period. So after that, you're going to get the book, but you're not going to get all the fun bonuses and prizes that go along with it. So maybe you've also already pre-ordered the book and you're ready for the practical guidance from a trained instructor right now. Well, we've got options for you there too. So every one of our listeners is invited to attend one of our monthly introductory sessions where we talk in a lot more detail about some of these reproductive biomarkers, how to use them to avoid or conceive pregnancy, and how they can be used to diagnose and treat health issues that may be bothering you. So before we go, I want to say this too. The reproductive biomarkers I mentioned today are the most consistent and the ones that we've been able to really standardize, test, and research, but there are certainly others too. You may notice an increase in libido as an indicator that your estrogen is rising, or a decrease in energy and a desire for rest as your progesterone decreases. You could notice pimples pop up right before your period or headaches in the middle of your cycle. These may be more individualized and so not as standardized for the general population, but they could still really be helpful biomarkers for you to use in your own life to stay informed about your reproductive health and whether or not it could use some extra support. So I don't want to minimize those. They matter, they're important, they just may not be in the standardized group for the general population. So the key is to learn to listen to and appreciate these bodies of ours. They are how we live and move in this world, and they are good gifts from God. Hopefully, knowing about just one of the cool things that they can do can help you to experience that wonder. As always, thanks for listening as we continue to explore together what it means to be woven well.